Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the first ever session from the Grassroots Technology team for Club Welfare Officers. Just a few things before we get going. Due to the significant number of people on today's call, we're running it as what is called a live event. So basically that means we can't hear you and we can't see you, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. So if you do have any questions at all, please do use the Q&A functionality you should have on the right hand side of your screen. So any questions at all, please do bob them in and we'll do our best to answer them as we go through the session. If you're struggling to see the screen at all, you can use full screen mode. In the bottom right hand corner you should see two opposing arrows. Give those a tap and it will just expand the screen a little bit more. As this is quite new to many people, there may be a lot of questions we're trying to get through, so we do thank you for your patience while we do try and get through those. And finally, this session is being recorded. You can access that via the same link you've used to join this session right now. So as soon as we're finished, just click the link and you'll be able to then jump straight in. Just be aware the first 13 or so minutes will just be complete silence of our holding screen. So if you are going to share this with some other people within your club, just pre-warn them that if you are going to use this link to come back to the recording, just skip 13 minutes or so and you'll get straight to where we are right now. So in terms of today, what we're going to do, we're going to look at how we can use technology to help keep children safe in football and how we're going to do that through a whole game system. We'll look at the safeguarding tab that you should have and all the functionality that's within that. We'll look at the removing and adding of club officials and team officials, so you can see how simply, hopefully, and easy it is to complete that task. We'll be looking at the DBS and starting it and ending it through whole game system and how that can speed up the process and make your lives a little bit quicker and a little bit easier, and also how to link and also access the data of the parent carer to a child. So Ash is with me this afternoon and he will be doing a lot of the demonstrating, and I'm also joined by Elizabeth as well, and we'll be monitoring the Q&A as we go through. So in terms of whole game system, what is it? Well, to be fair, whole game system is your monitoring tool. It's one of the most useful tools in your toolbox because it's literally a one-stop shop to effectively manage and monitor the qualifications and DBSs of your coaches through all in one place. So we're trying to bring you all the information you need and put it in one place. So from my perspective, to be proactive and to keep on top of things, I'd be expecting to log in almost once a week just to double check everything is as is and as it should be, as I'd expect it to be. And you can see at the bottom there in bold, the effective monitoring and management of key safeguards of education and DBS helps keep children safe. And that is really key to what we're trying to do using whole game system. So without further ado, because I already know you're struggling to understand how fast I speak, I'm now going to pass over to my colleague Ash, and he's going to take you through a live demonstration of all the functionality we currently have within whole game system to help you monitor your qualifications.
Hi Sam, thank you very much.
Yes, pal.
So I'm just going to share my desktop and you can give me the heads up that you've got that.
Yeah, I got you.
Perfect. So good afternoon everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm going to take you through a short demonstration now of all the different functionality that is available to you within whole game, as Sam has mentioned. It has been recorded, so you will be able to watch it back if there's particular pieces that you're looking at, and later on in the webinar we will share with you where there's also some extra information about whole game system. So the first thing I'm going to start by showing you is around the club officials and team officials tab, because if that is all correct, if that is all in order, it makes your role as the club welfare officer a lot easier to manage. So I'm going to use for the purpose of this one of our demonstration clubs, and you'll realise when you go into whole game system you've got a number of tabs across the top of the screen here. If you are a new club welfare officer, you might not yet have been assigned to the role. So what I'm going to show you now is how your club would do that, and that will get you access into whole game system. So firstly, going to start off with the why. Why is it important to keep our club officials and our team officials up to date? And it's really, really important for a number of reasons. So firstly, as Sam mentioned, to ensure that we can safeguard children within the game, we need to ensure that the data within the clubs is correct. So updating your club officials and team officials is imperative and needs to be done as soon as any of those changes are made. So in previous years, a lot was linked around affiliation. We're moving away from that now to make sure that the data is up to date 365. So if somebody comes or somebody leaves, we need to be updating that in the system. And the idea behind it is we then have a clear picture of the people that you've got within your club, and also reduces any issues should something arise whereby we need to make contact with particular clubs because of an inquiry or concern that's been raised. If your data's up to date and correct, we can make sure that we're contacting you only when we need to be doing so. So once I'm within my club, you'll see you've got a number of tabs down the left-hand side, and the two we're going to touch upon first of all are the club officials and team officials. So the club officials tab gives you the key officials within the club, and they are the required officials that you must have to run your club. So for youth football, it will be the chairman or chairperson, secretary, treasurer and welfare officer, and they will show at the top of the screen here, and it will give you some data on your key club officials. You'll notice that when you hover over the crosses on the right hand side, you can't remove one of those club officials from these sections because they are mandatory to have. So if you were looking to change a club official, you would need to use this add official button at the top here. So use the example that maybe the welfare officer has left and you now need to appoint a new welfare officer, or any of those other club officials. We can click on the add official button and you'll see that the first option is search by fan and date of birth. So I know my fan and my date of birth, and then if I click on search, what that will do is it will show that they found this individual. So it's found me as an individual. You can't change the club because you're within the club you already are. The only thing you can select is the role that that person would go into. As I say, you've got your main club official roles at the top. So you might have a temporary secretary to appoint because the secretary is going away. But there are also another huge long list of club officials. So within this, you can select any given role, the start date, and that would then, when you click on the OK button down here, when it's been selected. So if I was to say the auditor from today, check the box here and you'll see that the OK button then becomes live. Once I click on OK, that would appoint the said person into the role that you're looking for. If you can't find the person using their fan and date of birth, or they may not know their fan number, across the top here you've got your other options. So if you do search by details, you can enter first name, last name and date of birth. Postcode isn't mandatory, sometimes confuses the search because people haven't put in the postcode or potentially put in the wrong postcode. So we would urge you to start with your first, your last and your date of birth. And you'll see that once I've used one of these two options, the create new contact then becomes available, but it only becomes available once you've done a search for the individual to avoid us creating duplicate fan records. So that's how you would add a club official to your club. And you can certainly have a look through that at the moment, make sure everything's up to date and correct. And if not, you might wish to mention it to the secretary or somebody who may be responsible for updating that. And likewise, if you're a new welfare officer not yet in the role, you can mention that to your club in terms of adding you. I'm going to focus now mainly on the team officials because this is where the main bulk of the work from a welfare officer's perspective will lie. And under your team officials tab will be a list of all the officials that are associated to any teams that are affiliated to your club within the current season. So when you look down the screen, you'll notice it gives you the team name, the individual person, what role they've got and when that role was created. So this gives you a good overview of all your team officials and whether they are in the correct roles or not in the correct roles. And likewise, again, you've got an add official button here. So if people do change roles during the season or you have somebody that leaves, this is where you would make those amendments. So the add official button, we've kept it exactly the same. So it's exactly the same again with fan or search details. And you'll notice that the create new isn't available until I've done that search and tried to find the individual. For the purposes of the demo, we are going to imagine that one of our coaches has left. So I'm going to use Pat Test, who's down as the assistant coach. If I click on the cross at the end of the role, you'll see it comes up with a pop-up box that says, I want to remove this role, and it gives you an overview of exactly what you're going to remove from the system. I can pop in today's date and it automatically does it for me, because effectively if you're removing a role, it will automate the process for you. You can't pop in a date of when you wish to do so. What you can do when appointing is you will have flexibility of changing those dates. When you're removing somebody, it is a remove now. So if I was to click on OK, it would ask me the question, are you sure? And when I click on OK, whole game system will have a look at the role, and you'll see that Pat Test is now removed as the assistant coach, but is still in the role of the first team manager. So this is where you'll update any of your coaches and team secretaries and other information once you've done your club affiliation. Within the team officials roles, whilst I go on to the actual roles themselves, you'll see that there are a number of different roles that you can appoint to a team official. So the club officials are quite limited, team officials even more so. So when you look at the list, you get a very reduced number of roles. So you'll know what role you wish to assign. Majority are coach, assistant coach, manager, assistant manager, potentially goalkeeping coach, and then the other one that's quite popular is this team secretary role. And that team secretary role is a role that populates across the full time. So it might be somebody within your club who is helping to do the administration of that team. They're not actively coaching or managing the team, but they do the administration, maybe the post-match returns, etc. And this is where you would add those individuals into that role to ensure that they have that ability across in full time once the league is integrated. So that is an overview for you of team officials, and you'll see that in here you've got some bits and pieces at the top here in terms of filtering. So you can filter to look at a particular team. So if you're a larger club, you might want to look at a team at a time. You can also filter to look at particular roles. So you might look, for example, at the team secretary role to ensure that the relevant people that are in those posts are against the team that you expect them to be in. One of the key features, and the reason I've left it till last, is this team officials report. And this is really, really helpful because it gives you a download of the team officials within your club. So if I click on here, and it will take a second or two to load, what it will give you is it will give you a download of the team officials with some data. Quite helpful if you're doing sort of a look through as to what you wish to cleanse, who is currently in roles. You can have a download and you can look at that and you can use it to cleanse. What I'm going to touch upon a bit later sort of trumps this, which is in the safeguarding tab, and that colour coordinates it a little better for you. So keep that in mind, and I'll share that when we get to the safeguarding tab. So that's an overview of your team officials page. And then the final thing to cover is what the dots mean. Qualification expired is a red dot, qualification due to expire is an orange dot. And again, that will tie into what we're looking to keep you up to date with in your safeguarding tab, which is where you will do a lot of your work. So team officials is where you will do your updating. Whilst we're on team officials, I'm just going to touch upon squad lists, because your team officials may be requested to run squad lists on behalf of their team, or you may be requested to run squad lists on behalf of your club. So there are two ways for you to produce and run a squad list. And the first one is using this Teams tab down the left-hand side here. And if I click on Teams, what it will do is it will give me an overview of the season and the teams that I'm running. If one is highlighted in bright red, that means there's a suspension there. So it could be there's an outstanding fine, haven't paid their affiliation. So you would need to make contact with your county FA to get that resolved. But most importantly on here, you'll see a button that says squad list. And what happens when you click this button, I've got a pre-run squad list, which I'll show you, is you will get a squad list of players. but it also includes the team officials. And you'll see that as you scroll down at the bottom of the page, you get your list of team officials. So we've talked about keeping your data clean and the importance of making sure that your team officials are up to date. Another reason why you must do this is if they're not, they will appear on this squad list. So use an example that your county FA are doing some safeguarding visits. Your club is one of the chosen clubs and they turn up at a fixture or training session and they may have pre-run this squad list, for example, and they will be expecting to see Sam, Kyle and Lee at the session. If they turn up and Ash and Elizabeth are taking the session, straight away we've got a discrepancy in terms of the data that is logged. So again, it just reinforces that point that we need to make sure that this is kept up to date as much as possible, so it avoids any inquiries being sent to the wrong clubs and any concerns being raised whereby the coaches listed are not therefore coaching or managing the team on a match day or a training session. But this is what your squad list will look like. If you've got pictures, it will give you pictures, it will give you names, and then on the bottom screen there, you get emergency contact details, and we'll cover that in a little more detail later when we talk about the parent linking to a child. The other way that you can run squad lists is if you are not a club official. Everybody, when they log into Whole Game System, will have this Home All tab. And if I click on my Home All tab, down the left hand side, I've got a My Clubs and Teams tab here. And if I was a coach of a team, I wouldn't have tabs across the top because I don't hold a club official role, but I would have this tab down the left hand side of coaches and teams. And when it loads the clubs and teams that I'm involved with, when I drop down the list again as a coach, I have the option to run it specifically for the coach, for the team that I coach. So you'll see the squad list option, and again they will get that squad list through that they can use, and depending on league rules they can use digitally on a device or potentially download it and print it so it can be shown to the opposing side prior to the game. So that covers off squad lists for you, and again encompassing all of that is the need to keep the data up to date to ensure that we are making everything as seamless as possible. I'm going to go into now slightly different club. So I'm going to go into my club welfare officer role for the FA demonstration club. And this is where I'm going to cover for you the safeguarding tab. So the safeguarding tab is a really important tab in the system. And again, from a welfare officer's perspective, for me, it is probably the tab that gives me the most information, but also the easiest to read and decipher that information. So once I click on, I get my club safeguarding tab, and we'll leave the DBS one until a bit later. And as you scroll down, you'll see that the screen is color coordinated. So you can start to see very, very easily, without downloading any reports or any information, who has got the relevant qualifications in a snapshot. So down the side, you'll get a red line if there's things that are outstanding. You'll get a green line if everything is all in order. And if everybody had, for example, here, I had my emergency aid that had run out, this line would show orange to show you that something is coming up for expiry. So the way the system works is something in green is accepted and in date. Something in orange will give you a notification if you hover over it of expiring soon. So that means it's due to expire within a short period of time. So you can give the coach a nudge. For example, I would be telling Adam, you need to go online and do your safeguarding renewal. Red ones, where you see red, mean they're out of date and haven't been renewed. And if it is blue navy, that means that it's not actually been completed at any stage. So you'll see here, for example, this role of club assistant secretary. At the moment, this individual hasn't completed relevant roles. So within the safeguarding tab, you will get an overview of all your club and your team officials. As I say, when you hover over them, it will give you different information and hopefully make it clear what the SG, the EA are, because when you hover over, you get this little tab above that tells you EA is emergency aid and so forth. What you also have on this page are these really, really helpful filters across the top of the screen, and you can filter on different areas. So if I use DBS, for example, I might want to know everybody that has an out-of-date DBS within my club, because actually that to me is really important. So when I filter and click on out-of-date DBS, what that will do is it will filter down my club officials and my team officials to all of those that are out of date, and I can then decipher from this who actually needs a DBS and who doesn't. So what I might decide is actually club officials and so on I'm not really too keen on seeing, but if I sort by club roles, I might decide that actually I'm going to decide club managers are really important here. So I want to look at club managers and then look at club coaches. So once you complete your filters, it will leave me showing that one of my club managers has an out-of-date DBS, and I can then make contact with that individual and ensure that their DBS is then completed. And those filters work exactly the same for these other statuses across the top. And when you're completed, if you use this clear filters button, all of your data will reappear as it was at the beginning. So really helpful screen for you to be able to look at all of that information from a safeguarding perspective. As I mentioned earlier, there is also this export filter at the top here, and for me this is far better than the one on the team officials tab because of the way it appears. So if I go to one I ran earlier on, you'll see in this one, not only does it give you the details, but it shows you clearly in green, orange and red where people are at, and the blank boxes for where they haven't completed something. So it's a really easy opportunity for you to be able to see where everybody within the club is at and who you might need to chase. On the left hand side of the screen here, I've cut it down because it does include lots of people's dates of birth and so on, but you get first name, date of birth, fan record, what roles they hold within the club, and then all of the available information that they might need to have done. So again, you can download that very, very easily by using this export to PDF option in the top right hand corner. Another link just to mention to you, we've got a link to the FA Safeguarding Children policy. So again, if it's something you haven't got saved, nice easy place to go into safeguarding, download this, and then you've got direct access to the safeguarding policy too. So that is there for you at the tip of the fingers effectively. So if you needed it pitch side, you could look on a mobile device or so on. The one thing I haven't covered is this filter by name or fan at the top here, and I've left it till last because it's actually really helpful. So if you're just looking at one individual, coach has phoned you, I'm a bit unsure about what I need to do, you could easily type in a first name and it will bring up anybody that matches those details. So if I type in Claire, who came up as our coach, again, it just filters down nice, quick and easy rather than using the filters to one particular individual that you're looking for. And then it will give you those details. And again, if you just remove that, it automatically takes you back to your original screen. So that's the safeguarding tab in a nutshell. Really encourage you to take a look, have a look around, look at the filters. And then the final thing is just how you would see any coach's personal details. So you'll see that when I hover over any of the individuals, they have a line underneath them. So if I hover over myself, when I click on it and go in, you can see a bit more detail on the individual. So it'll give you a bit of information, also address, contact details if that's what's needed, potential discipline. So if any of your coaches have had any discipline, you can see that there as well. And really what I wanted to show on this page is around photos, because growingly now leagues are requesting photos of managers and coaches. And again, that ties back to our squad list, but you'll see here, edit is locked. And if you hover over it, it says you cannot edit because this person has access to their own account. So where a coach has accessed their own account within the last 12 months, you'll need to make sure that they update any photo on their fan record. Others you will be able to do for yourself. So if I go back a step, click back on my safeguarding tab, and if I scroll down and click on Barry, you'll see that when I go into Barry's fan, I've got an edit details. So if the individual has not gone into their own fan, you do also have the ability as the club under the safeguarding tab to scroll down and you get the option to add a photograph. and it's like most photographs now. If I go to, that's a bad option. I go to pictures. I won't add myself as Barry, but you'll see that you can start to move around. So if you've got a family portrait, you can make sure that it's the individual. You can also start to rotate. So if they've sent it to you upside down, and we often get that, you can do so, but you can also click on upload a different image, and it will allow you to upload if that photo isn't suitable. Key thing to remember, make sure you go down to the bottom and use this Save Changes button. Otherwise, you've uploaded the photo and it will disappear when you go back out. So that is your safeguarding tab. Lots of great information on there for you. And if you are a new welfare officer, that is going to be your go-to place for all of that information. And providing you've kept your team and club officials up to date, that should keep you in the know with what you need to know. I'm now just going to touch upon parent and player linking, really important part of the system. And you'll see that when you're in your club role, down the left hand side, there's a new email capture button. And if I click on this email capture button, it will give you a list of players that require an email address. So those of you that run adult and youth teams, you'll see that there is a slight difference, that this says add player email and this said add parent email. And the difference is simply that anybody that is under 16 requires a parent email and then the parent to be linked to the child. Anybody that is 16 plus can have the player email, and that will be directly on their fan record on the whole game system. So if I wanted to add in for a player's email for a parent, I click on the box and I could type in my email address and click on save. I'm not going to do that for the purpose of this demo, but when I do click on save, you'll see that we've done one earlier on and it has now expired. So you'll see that it's got an alert on the right hand side to say the link has expired. So should you wish to resend one, you can click on edit, and when you click save again, what that will do is it will update the system to say await and reply, and that now will send an email to the parent to go through a process to link them to their child. So that is the new way of doing a parent-child link, and with an adult player, it simply is type it in and save it, and that then shows within whole game system. There is another way, and some clubs have been utilising this way because they currently have parent details. So there is a player registration tab within your club tabs. And if you click on that tab down the left hand side, what that will do is it will bring up all players for you. You can then again use these filters across the top. So if I was to click on under 12s, it would filter out any of the adult players for me and just show the players that are eligible for the under 12s. And you'll see that parent guardian link symbol is next to the majority of my players. But I've got one player here, underage test, who is not linked to a parent. And if I was to click on this player, very similar to the coaches, it would take me into their fan record. So again, I could upload a photo, etc. if I required to do so. I can see ID checks that have been done by the club, but most importantly, I've got this parent guardian section and it tells me there currently isn't anybody. And when I click on add parent guardian link, again, very similar to the coaching page, I can pop in some details about the person I wish to add. And if I pop in those three main details again of first, last name and date of birth and click on search, what it will do is it will come up and say, I think I've found the parent for you, and you can then associate that parent to the child. If it comes up that we can't find the parent, there might be more than one record. You might decide to pop in an email address or some further information about the individual. And likewise, if it comes up that there is no record, for example, if I search my sister, she wouldn't appear because she doesn't have a fan. You do then have the opportunity to create a new fan record, and that would then link to the child. So I'll go back and show you one that looks correct. Whilst I'm waiting for this to load, lots and lots of questions about the why on this. So if you remember back to our squad lists, on the squad list, we were fortunate enough to have details of all the players' emergency contacts. This is taken from these individuals that we are linking to the children. So if we go back to the start, the why of we're doing this webinar, it's to ensure that we safeguard children throughout the game. By doing this and keeping to best practice, we can then ensure that if something happens at a training session, something happens at a match, we have those details of that parent or guardian. So if I go into this player that has got one, you'll see within the player when it loads that it will tell me whether they've got one or more parents, and it will also show me some contact details for those individuals, and that is what is then brought forward to the squad list. So really, really important that we get that updated, and I would suggest one step further, by next season 21-22, every child will have to have a parent attached. If you're within a competition as a club that currently doesn't mandate that, I would suggest as best practice that you start doing that throughout this season, as it will certainly help your club from a safeguarding perspective if anything does arise at any particular fixture or training session. So I showed you the new way, and I showed you the older way of attaching the parents. There are some guidance details, but I won't steal Sam's thunder, as he's going to mention a bit later on something called our knowledge base, and you're probably now fed up with me after 20 odd minutes. But I have one more thing to show you, and this is something that has changed the safeguarding side of the game massively. So when we used to do our DBSs, they used to take some time to come through. And we devised a way where DBSs can be created and started within whole game system. So to avoid things like duplicate fan records and a coach's DBS being put on one fan when their level 1 is on another, we now have this DBS applications tab within your safeguarding tab. And if I click on here, at the top of the screen, you have a blank space, it will be for majority of clubs. And this is where you would enter your GB group organisation PIN. So for those of you who have been a welfare officer for some time, this will be very familiar in terms of the terminology. For those of you that might be new to the role, within GB Group, this is the company that we do our DBS applications through, and they will allocate to each club a PIN number, which then links through to their DBS applications. So your club, once you've initiated and popped in the PIN number within DBS applications, and that is saved, you will no longer be able to do your GB applications direct through their website. It will all be done through whole game system. And there's a number of huge benefits on that, which Sam will touch on a lot more in a few seconds. The final thing I just want to mention to you is the add new official button. And this is simply into the role of a DBS applicant only. And the only people that you need to add into this role are new coaches or managers that have come to your club that do not currently have a DBS application that is approved and in date. If they've got one that's approved and in date, you can add them under the team officials tab and assign them to the team as normal. And likewise, if one of your DBS applicants is a current team official that has run out of their DBS, you don't need to add them here, because they will have a My DBS tab within their whole game system to click on within their login, and that will then initiate the application for the DBS to you as a welfare officer. So I think I've covered everything on my list. I'm going to hand back to Sam now, who's going to show you some screenshots of the DBS application from this stage to its completion, and then we've got a pit stop for any questions that we can run through anything you need me to do so. So back over to you, Sam.
Great stuff, thanks Ash. Let me just minimise this. Okay, so as just a bit of a consolidation really as to what Ash has just been through. So we started with the adding and removing of team or club officials. It's the same method both ways, but obviously they are different tabs because they are different roles. So I think there has been a question in already around that one of the coaches was incorrect on the squad list. That's just a case of removing them within the team officials tab and adding in the correct one. And as Ash reiterated, keeping your data clean is vital to ensure that you know who's in the club and you can effectively monitor them. And as Ash also mentioned, if leagues are or the county FA coming to do a safeguarding visit, ensuring that all those people that are listed are actually on the sideline is vital as we're going through. Ash did touch upon the safeguarding tab and the plethora of different functionality within there, other than DBS applications, which I'm going to take you through in just one moment. But you can easily filter to identify who you need to action. As you can see, you've got the roles or the filters of DBS status, safeguarding status, emergency aid status, etc., and you can filter by expiring soon or by expired completely, and you can also export it to a PDF as well, which is really clearly coloured and colour coded. Then we went through the parent and carer linking, so we now got two ways of doing this. We have this brand new way, which was released a couple of weeks ago, which basically you just put in the email address of the parents. That will fire them off an email to create their own account and to be able to effectively manage and monitor their child's data through all our systems in one place for themselves, but also saves the club having to input that data. Ash did show you the other way, which you can physically type in the parental data should you want to do it that way. There is the two ways. No way is the right one. I know myself as a club official, I much prefer the one that saves me a bit of time. So I do use the email capture one. From a coaching perspective, coaches can track and monitor their own qualifications. So don't think it's just for people within a club who can track the status and the dates on a coach. The coach can go to their My Account tab. They can also update their own details in there. So if I'm using match day week in, week out, no one within my club will be able to edit any of my details because I am deemed to own my own account under GDPR. Now, as a coach, what I can do, or as any of you can do now, because if you've logged into Wholegame before, you head into My Account, you can update any of your own details apart from your name and your date of birth, as they are held against suspensions. So if you do spot any errors or any formatting errors you want updating, just get in contact with your county FA, and it literally takes us seconds to be able to update those for you. We touched on the squad list as well, so it can be generated in two places. One by the club, you can do it in the Teams tab, or by the manager in the My Clubs and Teams tab. And also on the very back page of there, the child's emergency contact details are on there as well. So if you've linked your parents or carers to the children, their emergency contact details will be on the back sheet of this. So I produce mine before a game each week, and I've got that saved to my phone. So if I do need to refer back to it, I've got that quite quickly to access. I'm sure I need it, and hopefully I never will. So before we go into any form of questions, because we do have a time set aside for it, I'm just going to touch upon starting a DBS within Wholegame system. So you might be thinking, well, why would I want to do it within Wholegame? The biggest benefit really is time. It saves a lot of time. Starting a DBS within Wholegame system means that the application is stamped with the fan record of the applicant. So in the past, once we've gone through GBG and the complete and clear has come through, you've got your certificate, and you then had to wait for somebody at GBG to log into our system and assign that person their updated DBS check. What we do by starting a Wholegame system, as soon as that application comes back as complete and clear, it's an automated process. So no matter what time of the day it goes through and has been approved, it will just straight away appear on the fan record of that individual. So it just reduces that time greatly. I'm aware that from the verification of one person to appearing on their fan record, I think our record so far is 23 hours, which we've never really had before without using the functionality through Wholegame system. Another thing as well, it's less likely to create duplicates. So again, reduces some of the admin pain that you potentially have had in the past of trying to find out that my fan record said Sam Yates and not Samuel, but my application and my DBS says Samuel Yates. So they created me a second record and a second account. And obviously we don't want to be having more than one account. We want everything all in one place. So again, starting the application through Wholegame system just means that when you get to the back end, there's no searching and having to create new people because your fan record's already attached to it. And the final thing really is it gives the applicants, the club, and also a county FA, if they're there to help you if you need any support, you can all access the application's progress in one place. So you're not having to jump between different systems trying to understand where something is, and the applicant doesn't have to keep coming to you to say, any chance of this being sorted yet? Where am I up to? They actually can just log back into Whole Game System and they'll see if it's in progress, if it requires payment, or if it is indeed complete and clear. So, as Ash mentioned, you can find the DBS within the safeguarding tab. I've just realised that screenshot is slightly out of date. It does still say CRC, and I'll update that for this evening. But what you will see when you go into your safeguarding tab, just to the right of Club Safeguarding, you will see DBS applications. And as Ash mentioned, you'll then be given the opportunity to enter your GB group PIN. Now, this is a one-off. You don't have to do it more than once, but if you get it wrong, you'll need to contact either us or the County FA, and we can get that updated for you. Because what happens when you enter it, you get a little padlock in there, and that basically means that it's locked in, so you don't have to keep re-inputting it. If you're unsure of what your GB PIN is, you can get in contact with your County FA and they can help you. But one little thing to just think about, it should always be 6 digits long. So if you've got one that is, I know I've seen many people have put in the welfare officer's fan number, which is potentially 9 characters long. So if you are seeing that is more than or less than 6, get in contact with your County FA and they can get that updated very quickly and very smoothly for you. So as I mentioned, once you're happy, you've put your PIN in and you're good to go and start adding people. You'll click on, if you go back one, the blue button there that says Add New Official. So I'll tap on Add New Official and I can type in either the full name or fan if I know it and the date of birth of the person. You don't need to input the postcode. I would suggest if you want the best results to not put postcode in. So as in this screenshot, we've just used the full name and date of birth. And that has then been able to bring up Danny, who we're trying to add in as the DBS applicant. So again, you don't need to put the postcode in if you don't need it, just full name or fan and date of birth. We do find that fan works a little bit faster in terms of a search, but only by millionths of a second. So don't worry too much about that. But you can see on the right hand side of Danny's screenshot there, I've got the green button that says Add Official. So I'm happy that I want Danny to be the DBS applicant for my club. I will tap on Add Official. And you can see straight away then, I've got Danny's details there, his fan record, and finally I've got Not Started. So that's again, from a club perspective, we can now start to monitor and track where that application is up to. And I know this is not starting now, so that means that Danny now needs to log into Whole Game System and kick off this application. If they don't log in and kick it off, they will never get the automated email from GB Group to then start to input their data onto GB's site. So this is what Danny would see. So Danny's logged in now. So instead of being in a club tab, he's now in his all and home. And at the very bottom there, in that bottom tile, you can see My CRC. It does actually say now My DBS. So you tap on that. And now what is pertinent to understand is that if you are more than 6 months away from renewal, it will not be allowed to start your new DBS application. So you can see there in this instance, someone's already got one that's in date, it's accepted, and you can see the renewal date is on the 20th of the 10th, 2017. So it's really upfront and it tries to give you all the information you could possibly ever need, but it has to be within 6 months to be able to update a DBS application. But for this for this series of screenshots, we're happy that Danny is requiring a brand new DBS. So once Danny goes into that My DBS tab, he can see there I've got FA Demonstration Club, and next to it I've got a big green select. Now what someone might have, so if someone in my role, I've got 3 or 4 different clubs that I'm currently working with or coaching for, what I can do is select the club I want to do the DBS check through. So obviously it's an FA DBS, it will be in place for them all, but for the instance of this, I would potentially choose the welfare officer who's probably the closest to me to verify my documents, or probably one that's been the most proactive in working with me, so we can get those documents verified and get the DBS pushed through as quickly as possible. So me as the applicant, or Danny in this instance, next to the FA Demonstration Club, he'd click select. And you can see I get a confirmation at the top there to say your details have been passed to GBG, and you should receive an automated email from them shortly. If you're not seeing that email come through to the applicant, the first thing to do is check that the email address is correct on their fan number. If it isn't, it's sending it to somewhere else. Secondly, is to ensure that the person has actually clicked select. If they haven't clicked select, they'll still show as not started within your club portal, and they will not have that DBS automated email until they have clicked select. But if you're still not getting it, and it has happened to a couple of people, not many though, but if you do have that issue, I'll pop up the email address to email later on, and we can help you try and get that sorted. So Danny's clicked select, and now you can see, and this is back in the club tab, that Danny McConnell has now application started. So we know full well he's gone into whole game system, he's clicked on select, and now as a club I can see on the left hand side there's a tiny little strip that's yellow, which basically means he's in progress, and you can see there I've got application started. And Danny would also see that within his own My DBS tab as well, so that we've got more eyes on to be able to track the progress of this application. So then the rest of this process basically happens as it always has done on GB's site. There's no more work to do within whole game system. So once that email has been generated and sent to the applicant can then log into GB Group. They update their details for their verification checks. They obviously then submit that for verification, and the club verifier will then log into GB Group and then complete the verification check once they have seen them, in whatever way that's going to be done in the current climate. GB Group will then submit the DBS check to the Disclosure and Barring Service, and finally, if it comes back complete and clear, as I said earlier, it automatically goes on to the fan record with no manual intervention needed. If there is maybe content or there's an issue with the DBS application, it will still show as in progress within whole game system, but the relevant teams will be in touch with the coach to ensure and to help them through the process or gather further information if that's needed. But you can see the changes in application status you will see throughout in whole game system. So at the points here you can see we've got ID verification required. As I mentioned earlier, it might say requires payment, whatever it may be, you will see that in here up until the point that it has been complete. Or if you have withdrawn the application as well, you can see that in there. And if you need to get that restarted, you just add them back in as a new official, get them to go back in and click start select against the right club again, and it will reinitiate the application for that person. So as I mentioned earlier, if it's complete and clear, it's automatically awarded, and it will just straight away hit the fan record, and you'll continue to see the status of that for 30 days. But then after 30 days, it will be removed from your My CRC tile or My DBS tile. And the reason for that is you don't want a big long list of people when you just really want to see the people that you need to action. So after 30 days, they will be removed from there, but it doesn't mean they've lost the DBS, and it doesn't mean they've been removed from your club. They've just got back into the safeguarding tab to monitor for the next 3 years. If there are any other results, so if it does require a bit of a further check, that is still managed by GB Group, and then will require that manual intervention at the end. So we'll just take that little bit longer to complete, but often that's not an issue at all. So before we head out to some questions, and I'm aware there's been quite a few because I've already answered several in the chat. In terms of some FAQs, one of the ones we get, especially recently when we've switched from logging in with a fan number to logging in with your email address. And basically the reason for that was we can verify that that person is that person. So it sends out an email to say, are you sure you want to claim this email for this account? And once you verify that, we know you've got one account, and wherever you go within the FA's world, you don't have to remember your customer ID number. You just remember your email address like you do for literally every other website in the world. So we're just bringing ourselves in line really to make it as easy as you can to log in. But what you might have at the moment is I'm struggling to log in, as the error message says I've got 2 or more accounts. If that's the case, you will see a forgotten email part of your when you're trying to log in. If you select that, it will actually let you select the accounts you should be using. But also, if you are still struggling, the email address you need to email will pop up in just a minute, and we'll help you remove the old accounts and bring all your data into one place, so you're not having to try and juggle different accounts. My qualification or the qualification isn't showing on the fan, so it might be a coach has gone through and done the latest safeguarding online, but it's not showing on their fan record. Just drop an email to your county FA and they can work out what's gone wrong there. It's often the case that the person who completed it did it with a different email address that's on their fan record. So that will create them a brand new fan, a brand new account, and put that qualification on that one. So again, contact your county FA. They will be able to merge those records together and ensure that, again, all the data is in one place, so it's easy to identify and easy to manage. One question we get quite a lot, especially at the moment while we're approaching the new season, is can I download all the players' names with their parents' carer details, as opposed to having to go in, as I showed you earlier, one at a time. Now, at the moment is a no, but we are at the moment renovating pretty much the whole of whole game system. We're just doing it a little chunk at a time. Now, the player registration tab is probably the next big one to be changed, and that's going to be changed later this year, sometime in late November. And within that, that will give you the opportunity to have an Excel download of all your players' names, but also bring off their parents' carer details all in one place in one spreadsheet. So if you did need to email all the parents just to say, as an FYI, we are returning to football, please ensure that your kids are doing their CV19 self-assessments before they turn up, etc. You can easily get that data straight off this website without having to go in individually or keep a secondary database elsewhere. So it obviously, and that again helps a bit with data security. Another one, and I've just covered this really, is my applicant hasn't received the email to complete the DBS. So the two checks you can do is, one, ensure that they are using the correct email address and that email is on their fan record. And secondly, is that they've logged into whole game system, they've gone to the My DBS tile and they've pressed select by the club that they want to initiate their DBS check with. If that's still not generating the email address, you'll see an email in just a second to pick up. Just drop us an email and we will look into that for you. And finally, I've entered my club PIN wrong when trying to set up for my DBS checks through whole game system. How can I change it? Nice and simple. Just get in contact with your county and they can update that on your behalf. As I mentioned earlier, once you put it in the first time, it does lock it in theory, because that should then never change and you never have to keep inputting it. It's trying to save you time. But we are aware sometimes typos can happen. And if that is the case, get in contact with the county and we'll make that changed as quickly as possible. So I'm now going to take a breath, and me and Ash, and I think Elizabeth as well, is on the line to cover as many questions as we possibly can. So Ash, do you want to read, or do you want me to read some out?
As you've been talking then, mate, if you want to read them, I'll answer them quite happily.
That's a great shout. Right, I'll just jump into some of the ones we've already published, because we have got quite a few in there. So we'll start with, can I add myself in as a club welfare officer, or does it need to be done by one of the other club officials?
So it will need to be done by one of the other club officials if you're not in as a club official already. So you can't automatically add yourself to a club. So if you are new to a role, I would suggest speaking to secretary or chairman of the club, and they can then add you, provided you meet all the relevant qualifications to that role as club welfare officer.
Excellent, thank you. How do I edit like names from caps to small, or change the date of birth if it's wrong?
Sadly, you can't do that. So we have some people who would use that to their benefit, is probably the politer way of putting it. So any amendments to any official details like first name, last name, date of birth, they need to go through either to your county FA or to our team at grassrootstechnology@thefa.com, and we can then get them updated for you.
Brilliant, perfect. Next one, you used to be able to update coaches' contact details within whole game system. However, I am no longer able to do this. Is it down to the coach to do it now?
It is, yeah. So the way forward with GDPR is that everybody owns their own data. So the club would own the club and team data, and the coaches would do their own. You will be able to do the odd few people who haven't logged into their whole game account themselves. However, if your coaches are doing their online qualifications and other bits and pieces, growingly now you'll find that they've logged in themselves. So any amendments to their details, they would need to update themselves within whole game.
Excellent. And the secretary and welfare officer on the top, but I only have club secretary showing.
Yeah, that's a great question, and we get it very often. So to save plaguing your whole game system with hundreds of tabs, as we're aware, I'm sure many of you hold more than one role, because within grassroots football you get collared in to do one thing and you end up doing 7. So rather than giving you all the different tabs across the top, there's a hierarchy of sort of tab names. So if you are chairman of a club, that will override your welfare officers tab, your secretaries tab, etc. So that's why you've only got one tab in whole game system, to save you having multiple, but you have all the options within there for the roles that you hold.
Perfect, thank you. Should all children have their photos attached to their fan profile?
That is a variance between leagues. So we have some competitions that it's a requirement that everybody has to have a photograph, and we have other competitions where it's not a requirement. So it will depend what leagues your teams compete in. However, again, from a club perspective, and it's something I know at my nephew's club, for example, not all of their leagues use whole game for registrations with photos, but as a club, they require everybody to submit their photo. So from a safeguarding perspective, their welfare officers, as they've got a couple of them, can then ensure that they can see who the child is within whole game system. So if they turned up at a training session, for example, they could identify who they need to speak to, or who the children are exactly.
Brilliant. Can each manager update parents' information as player registration officers?
So they don't automatically get access as a manager, as a player registration officer, because the player registration officer role is a club role. So that entitles them to see all the players within the whole club. So we have some clubs that would be happy with that, and they will add different managers into that role. And we'll have others that say, for example, actually, no, we don't want them to see our other 30 teams. So it would be dependent on the role that the club have assigned. But if they are only manager or coach, they won't be able to update any of those details, no.
Great stuff. We've recently took over running the club. Is there a way to retrieve our GB group pin?
Excellent. So yes, there is. If you speak to your County FA safeguarding team or designated safeguarding officer, they will have ability to look in the GB system. They'll be able to give you the pin and hopefully a little bit of guidance on what you need to do. And once you've got that in whole game system, you can get yourselves underway with the WGS integrated DBS.
Brilliant. How would parent helpers be dealt with regards to DBS still going through GBG?
So parent helpers will depend on whether they meet the criteria in terms of their regulated activity. So if the parent helper is not coaching, managing, etc., and just doing administration, for example, there's a likelihood that they will not need a DBS because they don't meet that regulated activity. So I would suggest that if they are managing and coaching, you must add them in as a manager, coach, assistant manager or assistant coach. If they are doing sort of team stuff on your behalf, they can be added onto whole game system as a team secretary, but that will be in an admin role only, and there won't be a requirement for them to do a DBS in that role.
Brilliant. As a welfare officer, I am the verifier. Who checks me when I need to update my DBS?
That's a fantastic question, and we get that quite regularly. So you've got a number of options. If there is another welfare officer within the club, so maybe there's 2 or 3 of you, if you're a larger club, one of them can do your DBS application and verify it for you. If you are the single verifier within your club and welfare officer, if you speak to your county FA, they will give your county PIN to you, and you will do that through GB Group, and they will then verify your documents so that appears on your fan record. Great
stuff. I am just conscious of time. I don't want to run over too much, but I'm going to ask you some more in here because they are really good questions. But anything we don't answer, I'll add to what's called our knowledge base, which I will come on to just after this. So another question for you, Ash. I have qualified coaches who have assistants who are not qualified. What role should I put the assistant into WGS?
Excellent. So I would encourage you all, and the expectation now is that you would go into whole game and add any of your coaches in the role of coach or assistant coach, assistant manager, etc. When you say qualified, there's obviously different qualifications that are required. Any of those managers or coaches will require a DBS if they are with those teams. So that's the first thing to consider. They might not necessarily need, for example, level 1, level 2 and those qualifications, but you really need to add them onto whole game system as one of those 4 manager or coaching roles, so we can then identify them and make sure that as a minimum they've got a DBS check in place.
Great stuff. With under 11 parents refereeing, do I have to add them as a as a role within whole game system as part of that team?
You don't know. So if they are just refereeing ad hoc matches for you, there's no requirement within whole game to record them down. If, however, they are doing any of the manager or coaching roles, again, it goes back to keeping that data up to date and making sure that they do that. Or likewise, if they're doing sort of any team admin, we would encourage you to pop them in as a team secretary. But if they're just refereeing ad hoc matches, there's no requirement to add them into whole game system at this stage.
Brilliant. That's great. There's got two more for you, Ash. What do I do if a coach has his DBS back and says it's complete on GB system, which showing is not starting a whole game?
Okay, so there's a number of things here. So if the system has been, if the GB group application has been started outside of whole game system, they won't show under that DBS tab as sort of in progress, application complete, etc., because it wasn't initiated in whole game system. So that's one thing that might be slightly different. If it was initiated outside of whole game and direct with GB group, when the paper application comes back to the applicant, there is also an additional process for the FA to then match that up and put that on the fan record. That takes a short while. So it could be that if it's only come back in recent days, that could also be an issue, and vice versa. If it has been done outside of whole game system, we could have the issue where it's been added to a new fan record. So if you make contact with either us or your county FA, we should hopefully be able to identify that coach and confirm where you're at with that application.
Brilliant. Last one for you. If I change my email address, how do I ensure my records follow suit?
Okay, so if you are using your whole game system and you go in and change that on your My Account section, that then allocates the email address across our FA network. So, for example, if you change in My Account, my email from ashlaughter@hotmail.com to ashlaughter1985@gmail.com, that would update me in my role as club secretary, welfare officer, my refereeing role, my assistant league secretary role, etc. So to avoid having to do it multiple times in multiple places, the way the system has now been set is by updating that key data on your My Account in whole game system. That should then flow across the FA network and update accordingly, and it will now update your login to the system. So when you go to log in, you'll need to use that new updated email.
That's great. Thank you very much, Ash. I am conscious of time, so I'll stop there. We've had just under 89 questions come through, so obviously we can't get through them all, but I'll show you where you can find some of the answers that we'll post over the coming days onto our what's called knowledge base in just a second. But thank you very much, Ash, for your help there. So very quickly, just to finish off, really, this is our knowledge base. So in here is where we put all the help guides for all of our systems. So the safeguarding part is pretty much the last part we are going to put online, and it's being built as we speak. So it should be on within the next couple of weeks at the very latest. But what we'll be doing as of tomorrow, once we've gone through both of these sessions and got all the questions in, we will be adding all of the questions that we've not been able to answer today and put them on the site for you. And to access that, you just head to grassrootstechnology.thefa.com. Also in there, a recording of this session will be available tomorrow, along with the slide deck as well. So if you do need to want to go in and have a look, and not have that 13 minutes of silence before the start of anyone actually doing anything, you'll be able to go in there and you can share the link then far and wide with people within your club to then say, this is how we should be doing things within the system. Did you know we could do this? Because some people may not have ever been told that some parts of this functionality exist, and are just left to hopefully find them. So if you do want to share it, do please do that. If you want to head over to grassrootstechnology.thefa.com, as I say, the slide deck and the recording will be on there tomorrow, and there will be some guidance on safeguarding specific over the next couple of weeks. At the moment, literally loads of stuff on player registration, on full-time, match day, pretty much everything you could think of across the Grassroots Technology Network. So do keep checking back on there if you are struggling. There is a ton of information to help you complete any task you need to get through. So all that's left for me to say really is to remember that we are modernising our technology to greater serve the game. And if you do have any problems or anything's going a bit wrong, please do email us, get in touch. You can do that at grassrootstechnology@thefa.com. So that's on screen there, grassrootstechnology @thefa.com. And we'll be able to then go work with you and make sure that everything is as you need it to be on your systems. And if you need a bit more hand holding through bits of stuff, if you're a brand new welfare officer, again, more than happy to help you feel comfortable using the system as well. So all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Very much appreciated. We hope you found it useful. And also a big thanks to Elizabeth and to Ash as well for their contributions this afternoon in hopefully making this a worthwhile hour and 6 minutes for you. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week. And I'm sure we'll be in touch very soon. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.